I want to talk about identity. It's kind of a bit of a psychological concept, but it also becomes spiritual really quickly. It comes up in spiritual growth as well. And it's really kind of an interesting concept and an interesting thing to look at, because identity, it's necessary when we develop, especially in early development and childhood and adolescence, and not only age, but we're in childhood and adolescence in various phases of our life, and some of us are more emotionally mature than others, perhaps, and so as we're developing, and Carl Jung used to call it the process of individuation. As we are becoming individuals, we're seeing ourselves as separate from our parents. Identity is an important thing. Then we have I am this, and then belonging comes in shortly after. I'm this, and I'm part of this, and so we do that with music and groups in school and different things that we affiliate ourselves with, and that becomes part of our identity, and so in that case, identity is a very useful thing as we're developing it, and then as that identity becomes stronger and more stable, then we've individuated in that sense, and now we're strong in that identity, and then perhaps its usefulness may not continue to be there, and it gets into specific identities and as well. So it's perhaps an identity that we had was very useful in our growth for a while, and now maybe it's beginning to limit us, because if I see myself as this, then I can't be that. If I see myself, if I see myself as a certain thing, then it limits. When I limit, it limits the way I see myself. Which in turn limits what's available to me, and what my abundance, the things, the possibilities that are out there. Some of them don't work if I have this identity. It's I'm not into that. That's not what I am. I always like to say, and sometimes in my sessions, too much, or in my own life, there's too much me here. I'm not into this. It's well, how do you know that, that maybe you isn't such a static concept? Maybe you could be into this. Maybe you could be open to being into something different, and maybe let go of your identity a little bit. So that's the idea, and it's really useful to reconsider what your identity is, and one of the ways that that I like to work, and this is kind of with the spiritual tradition that I am, is you can see yourself as one of the people, and there's an old, in the example would be is the story. There's an old native story that when you saw someone on the plane, and you'd declare who you are, and you'd say I am, and then you'd say whatever the word, the native word for I am, Sioux, I am Navajo, I am Nuichi, I am Navajo, and my people call me Running Bear or Michael or whatever else. So their primary identification was their people, and then that tells the person that I'm communicating with what I stand for, because the Sioux people, they stand for this. So, and my people call me this. And so I'm less personally identified and more collectively identified, which is less limiting, and then identity can be things that I stand for rather than that I am. If that, it's maybe a subtle distinction, but a really important one. Another thing we get identified with is our jobs or our roles in life. It's like I am a mother, I am a father, I am a an electrical engineer. And those all may be true things, but how much do we identify with them as who we are? A particular sticky identity in the work that in the people that I encounter in my work is like if you are a spiritual teacher or a healer or a yoga instructor, or because these are spiritual identities in a way. And so these are things that we maybe aspired to for a long time. Is maybe it wasn't our first career, and then we saw ourselves as a spiritual teacher, and then we developed that, and we received visions and awakenings, and so it's much more of an intimate thing. It's a real personal thing, and then so those identities then get entrenched even deeper, and it can still be challenging, because if I'm a spiritual teacher or if I'm a shaman, if I'm a spiritual teacher, that means that I have to, spiritual teachers, they do this, but they don't do that. It becomes limiting. And so rather what we could say is, with that, is we could say, well, the spiritual teaching or the psychotherapy or the yoga or the whatever practice it is, it's like, it's something that I do, but it's not who I am, but it's something that I'm present in that role. I'm taking on that mantle or that role, but so when I'm doing a ceremony, I am the shaman, or I am the spiritual teacher, or whatever else. But then when I'm not doing that anymore, I don't have to prop up that identity anymore. I can just be a Michael. I can just be one of the people. And so the job that I do, the role that I take, it's just something that I do. It's not who I am. And then if I'm not that, there's a lot more freedom. But then it's like, but then who am I? Well, I'm one of the people. As we grow more spiritually, there's less of a need to kind of concretize that identity anymore. It's like our sense of self can kind of adapt itself depending on this. If we're present and we adapt ourselves to being present in that experience, then, we don't need to be somebody as much. And it's a little weird at first, and I'm sure some of you have experienced it, but if we can loosen that up a little bit, it allows us to be more unlimited. It also prevents us from being triggered as much as the world, as I talked about last week. The world's changing a lot. I called it the shake-up. And as the world changes, if we're identified with things and then that thing gets messed with or shaken up, I have to defend my identity, right? I have to prove and defend and prop that thing up. And whereas if I'm less identified with it, I can almost just like, yeah, well, I guess you're right. I guess I am. And there's less to defend, and I am more free and less upset by it, less triggered by it. When we're identified with things, then we end up defending, because when they mess with that identity, it feels like they're messing with us, which may or may not be true. That's a good inquiry. When they mess with that identity, are they really messing with me? And can they really mess with me? Or is it just my identity and what I thought I was, what I think I am? So anyway, it's getting out there a little bit, so we'll bring it on back. So that is something to consider, and there's so much freedom in it, especially in times like this, because certainly identify when you need to identify. When you're growing and developing, we need identity, and then And then when we have a certain identity and we're strong in it, maybe we can not hold on to it so tight. And then maybe as we grow spiritually, maybe we don't need as much identity. We can see ourselves as one of the people, and it can be more fluid. We can just be what the situation needs. And I don't have to be somebody as much as I'm called to do things from time to time. So that is my video. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of a challenging thing to talk about, but I would invite you to inquire how that works for you. That's what all these videos are for. They're just like they're pointers to maybe if something resonates with you, you can work with how that works for you. And so thank you for watching my video this week. I appreciate it. And as you go through your week, maybe just think about, what you identify as and what you identify with. And is that identity still serving you? And do you need it to be that concretized? Or can you loosen it up a little bit and maybe find some freedom to be more things? And I will see you in a week.